glad you didn't ask me.
Now Roger's here, now we can start.
Yeah,
You
we're
have to
ready.
fly me
We'll
with a drink.
call the meeting to order. Begin with the roll.
Mr. Vano,
Here.
Mr. Pollock,
Here.
Mr. Thorstad,
Here.
Mr. Olson,
Here.
Mr. Wallaker, Dr. Mahoney,
Here.
Ms. Sobolik. Here. Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Ms. Otto.
Okay. First item we have is, let's take the order of agenda. Is there any items that you'd like to add, change? Not, the order of the agenda will stand as you have it before you. Minutes from last meeting, actually we have 2 minutes we have from the last meeting as well as an executive session.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Right.
Opposed? Let's begin with the project management report. Bruce?
Okay, thank you. Got a brief report going over last month's activities and what's coming up in the coming month. Again, on the technical side, continuing a lot of work, primarily concentrating on the Oxbow-Hixenbach ring levee, both in construction and design. I'll give the construction update in a little bit more detail. A little bit. Design work is continuing. We've also had a bid opening on the consolidation package that's going to allow for the gate well construction to begin next year if we can get the preload and the consolidation package going this year. The rest of it's going into just continuing with design. The in-town levees, we're in the bidding phase for the 4th Street pump station, the 2nd Street South flood wall. That's currently out to bid. There was a pre-bid meeting on Wednesday of this week. El Zagel's also in the bidding phase, and then the pump station that'll be on 2nd Street in front of City Hall is at 95% review, and that bid will be coming out in a couple of weeks. That'll be going for bid. Corps is continuing design on some of their reaches on the north section of the channel. We're continuing to work with them on that, as well as the Wild Rice Dam fish passage mitigation. Other things, continuing to coordinate with Minnesota on their EIS. Land acquisition is also continuing. The cemetery assessment team is at work. They had some field visits to cemeteries, and they're starting to develop potential mitigation plans for the various cemeteries. Cultural report is due out at the end of this month on the in-town levies. Also continuing looking at being able to move the project forward and potentially looking at public-private partnerships that were authorized under the WRDA bill. It's not for sure that this project will go to a public-private partnership, but it is something that is being explored. Also, we're working primarily on the Minnesota EIS on the socioeconomic analysis, and that is being drafted currently, and hopefully will be out in a few weeks. On the Oxbow-Hixenbach ring levee, just design and land acquisitions are continuing with that. Similar with the downtown projects. This was a photo I showed last month in July. Had an aerial photo that was taken the week before the board meeting. Shows approximately where the levee is and what's being worked on. This is a photo that was taken last week, so you can see the pretty extensive work that's gone on in the last month. When they first started, if you can remember, the early part of the summer was very wet, so they got off to a little bit of a slow start, but the last month has been pretty much perfect weather for doing the earthwork out there. So you'll primarily see on that, there we go, the portion that Riley Brothers, who's under contract with Cass County Joint Water Resource District, has been building levee in this area here, as well as some mass grading in this area. The rest of this is the development contract, which is Dakota Underground under contract to the Oxbow Job Development Authority. So we've got both contractors out there working. As of Tuesday of this week, the Riley Brothers had completed the levee section with a exception of a small gap here at 25. They've got excess material, and so we're going to be looking at also adding to their contract through a change order about another 800 to 900 feet of levee in this area here, leaving this drainage swale open so that this area can still drain through the north. But they were finished their existing work ahead of schedule, and we've got some excess material, so we're going to continue doing construction on the levee that has already been designed. So that will be going forward, and we'll be taking that change order through to the Cass County Joint Water Resource District Board.
Bruce?
Yes.
Might there be an opportunity, if any board member wish to line up something to take us in rather than just driving by it on the road?
Sure. If you want to coordinate through me or Ty Smith,
Well,
I mean,
if
if
you want to maybe
if we want to schedule a
send
larger
a
group,
notice out to the board as to what date and time, you might be able to arrange something, and then for
Sure.
those who are interested, we could do that.
okay, yeah, be happy to do that. It is quite a site out there. There's a lot of work going on, so it's a interesting thing. This was the first milestone area that they met. We had broken the job up into milestones. They've really completed milestones 1, 2, and 3. They were working on milestone area 4 with some mass grading, and that's the area we've decided to shift and use to continue to build levee along this area here, as opposed to just doing mass grading in this area here. So we'll get some productive use out of that dirt. So that's going forward. So with that, those are the activities. Yes.
Ken?
What would be the activities going forward throughout this year that you will be doing down there?
Okay. Let me come back up to the overall. We'll be continuing to, right now, as you can see, it's pretty much bare ground. They've got to put a gravel roadway on top of the levee itself. They've also got to do seeding and revegetation, getting it ready for the winter and final completion of the project. The contract that is out to bid right now, the north pond, stormwater pond, is going to be up in this area here, and we're going to be the Gatewell consolidation project that I talked about is going to be up in this area. So there'll be a excavation and basically a pile of dirt that will be on there to go ahead and get that soil consolidated, so that when we do the construction next year, there's no differential settlement. So if you were to come out for a visit, you'd see the ongoing construction in this area, the new levee section down in this area, and then a little later this summer, early fall, construction of the preload area up in that area. Dakota Underground, under the Oxbow Job Development Corporation, will be continuing. The only road that they're going to pave this year is the extension of River Bend Drive down to this cul-de-sac, which will allow early residents, houses that we need out of the way for next year's construction. They'll be able to start housing starts this fall in that area, so they can build replacement housing and then be relocated early summer next year. So, Mark?
What is the schedule on their golf course grading plan?
The talked with the Oxbow Country Club today, and they're going to issue the plans for bid Monday. And so they plan on a 3-week bid period and award after that. So we're probably looking 5 to 6 weeks out that would start. We're going to get with them on the when they have their pre-bid meeting, I think around September 8th, talk about schedule, what they might be able to see this year, what they might not be able to, and what they can accomplish in the season that they have left this fall, because that's there's not a lot of construction or growing season that we can put out yet. But there may be options for putting the seed in, just let it stay dormant over the winter so that it can start growing in the spring earlier than you could get in there and actually seed it. So we'll be having discussions with them. But my understanding is that that the documents will be out for bid on Monday.
And we, due to the excess material, have we, as part of the diversion contract, have we did more mass grading than we anticipated?
There is just the way the material worked up from excavation to fill and compaction. There is more material than was anticipated, but the working with more engineering who's doing the development to design to figure out exactly where all the material should be placed. We've made the decision on our excess material to extend the levee, so it's actually going to balance out under the Cass County Joint Water Resource District contract very nicely with this levee extension. We'll be able to balance our cut and fill by extending that levee. Not sure exactly on the quantities that are coming out of the development, how that balancing will work. I think we've got it figured out. We're trying to work cooperatively between both contracts.
Man, it's quite impressive out there. Farm curb there.
Yeah.
And that
I mean, you took a tour just recently out there, didn't you, Mark?
Yeah.
So I think it's worthwhile for anybody that wants to see it to go out there, just range it, and we'll make sure you can get through the site safely. A lot of equipment moving out there. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Brett, or Harry?
Afternoon. Monthly update. The aqueduct physical modeling continues. Oxbow Hickson-Bocke levee design continues. Wild Rice Dam design continues, and EA will be coming out on that project. We continue to assist the sponsors' design in the in-town levees projects. We're approaching a 95% design for Reach 5. Which is next to the Lower Rush River Cemetery study. Continue work on our mitigation plan and coordinating with the DNR and the EIS. Here's some pictures from the Maple River Aqueduct open house, which was held on July 24th. You can see that we had a lot of visitors and people that walked through that open house. We had about 180 people attend. And there were many groups represented, SAME, NRCS. We had a lot of people from the Minnesota DNR come through, the State Water Commission, North Dakota Game and Fish, floodplain managers. We had a lot of just public folks that came through. It was advertised or announced in the Star Trib a few days before, so we had some people walking through. Of course, we had sponsors, some elected officials. Media. There were 2 news crews from local here that came and spent most of the day, and you probably saw the news stories the next day or even that night that they had posted. And for those who weren't able to attend, a video is being produced that'll be hopefully posted on either FM Diversion or our core website so people can see that video. Cemetery study, this is just a basic recap of the slides you've seen before, the locations of the 11 cemeteries that could be impacted by the project, and that's the list of those 11. You've seen this before. On July 21st and 22nd, we conducted site visits to 10 of the 11 sites. We were unable to meet at Liam. We plan to do that yet, hopefully soon. We met with the individual POCs of each site, so caretakers and church board members, and others in attendance included that list: families, citizens, church board members, MNDAC Upstream Coalition, the Upstream Cemetery Authority, and of course we had some Diversion Authority reps with us too, in addition to the three of us from St. Paul. We will use the information gathered to determine a plan for each site, site-specific plans within a year, and we may have to visit the sites again. We will be asking for rights of entry for each of the 11 so that we can conduct cultural surveys, and those letters will go out probably within a month. As far as the site visits went, it felt like we had about 10 mini public meetings out there. We had in excess of 20 people at some of the sites, and so it was good interaction. We gained a lot of valuable feedback by visiting each one individually. Path forward, continue on the EIS. We'll continue to finalize our designs and the mitigation plan. That ends my briefing.
Any questions? Terry? Roger?
Terry, could you tell us what kind of investigation you'll be doing on the cemeteries?
It'll just be the phase 1 and phase 2 cultural. So the Diversion Authority, the sponsors, have a contract with URS Corporation, and we're asking that they conduct these surveys. And what they'll do is they'll do a lot of book research first, and then what they would like to do or would do is actually walk the sites and determine who's buried there, the dates of burial, and maybe work with the cemetery POCs to get a history of the site to determine if it's eligible for the National Register. And it's important to do them for all 11. It's really important to do this for Hemnes. If you look at the back of the monthly briefing, there's a picture of the Hemnes Cemetery, and they have an existing erosion problem. And you can see it's quite severe, and it's to the point where it's impacting grave sites. And this has been occurring since 1997, and it's probably the oldest Lutheran cemetery in the state. So that's just one step towards determining what a plan should be for this site. For your information, Hemnes, they've asked a lot of different organizations for help with their current problem.
Any further questions? Thank you, Terry. Move down to item 5, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. For the lawsuit update today, about noon, we received from the Federal District Court a favorable decision that was very significant. Just to kind of bring you up to speed, recall that in June, the Richland-Wilkin Joint Powers entity had filed a second lawsuit. Their first lawsuit was in Federal District Court. But they'd filed a second lawsuit in June in Wilkin County State Court in Minnesota. And our litigators, our attorneys, had filed a request, a motion for an injunction in the federal case, asking that the federal judge rule that, these two lawsuits are really the same. The lawsuit had already been brought in federal court. federal court had jurisdiction, and asked that the federal judge enjoin the Richland-Wilkin County, prevent the Richland-Wilkin County Joint Powers entity from proceeding in that state court action. And in today's decision, a memorandum opinion from Judge Tunheim, he granted that motion. So that's a very significant decision. You know, a couple of just bullet points about it. In the decision, the judge sort of recognized the inherent federal nature of this project, and the order means that the claims of the Richland-Wilkin JPA will stay in federal court, won't be allowed to be brought in state court. If you read the opinion, the memorandum of opinion, you can see that the judge said, as to the claims that you wanted to bring in state court, you're certainly welcome to bring them in the federal court case. The judge did recognize the importance of this project being able to proceed without delay. And again, significant that the court said that this case won't be decided in state court. So again, this is a significant decision for the diversion authority. I think the end result is this federal case kind of moves on as in the position it was in prior to June, and relative to a lot of the issues that have been in the news lately with the Minnesota DNR process. I mean, the diversion authority will continue to work collaboratively with the Minnesota DNR to work through their review process. It doesn't change that at all, and so that's my report. If you have any questions, I mean, there's a lot to it, but that's as good a job as I can do to summarize it.
Good job. Ken?
How about an update on where things sit in the federal lawsuit?
Well, so yeah, this is the federal lawsuit. What that means, where is it at? As with all lawsuits, it starts with sort of the summons and complaint. That, of course, happened last year. The end is a hearing in front of the judge where the judge sort of reviews the record being the Army Corps of Engineers record that it used to support the chief's report. And it's that record that the opponents are saying, there's some mistakes made in one way or the other. Ultimately, a lawsuit of this type, the judge decides whether or not it feels that somehow it's the wrong project. And so that's still in front of us sometime. That has not been scheduled yet. Really where we're at in the lawsuit is identifying what that record is that the judge would review. I've been told, I can't remember if it's 2 terabytes of information, something like that. I mean, just an incredible volume of paperwork and analysis that the Corps went into to review this project. But the question is, how much of that is going to be part of the official record that's subject to review of the court? So they're kind of in the middle of the lawsuit there and identifying the record, and then in theory, sometime down the road, it'll be determined by the judge.
Well, why does it take so long? I mean, I understand there's a lot of information, but it's like it takes longer to do their legal review than it took to develop the plan in the first place.
Right. I'm not sure how to answer that. If that question gets asked of lawyers an awful lot. But maybe all I can say is at some point, and there's just been a few different things going on. There was a motion, to amend the complaint that was challenged earlier in the first half of this year, and then now this came along. Some of those things do cause a little bit of interruption in the normal flow. The former judge that was assigned to the case recused himself, and we have a new judge. At some point, there will be presumably a scheduling hearing, and we haven't had that yet. So at that point, that's when the federal judge on this case will say, okay, this is how we'll move forward apace, and we'll have a hearing. Ultimately, the dispositive hearing will be decided, and then we'll know what the schedule truly is. But it's a fair question.
Any other questions? Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Bruce, I know you've got a lot of them.
Yeah, this month in the year is a busy month for the task order amendments and contracts, just because of typically our period of performance on these run through the end of the fiscal year, which will end at the end of September. So in August, we like to get all that sort of cleaned up and start preparing for the new fiscal year 15. So I'll walk through these, and we can take the motions that probably in some groups that make some sense. This first one is for a materials testing lab, master services agreement for Terracon Consultants. We've got a materials test master services agreement with Braun Intertech for doing the materials testing on the Oxbow Hickson Baki levee project, and that contract is with the Cass County Joint Water Resource District. We need one with the Diversion Authority to do the testing for the in-town levees, so we're recommending that be Terracon Consultants. We don't have a task order to go with this yet, so right now this is just the master services agreement. As we get scope laid out for the task orders for the various construction packages that will be going on, we'll be bringing you those task orders. So this is just to get them under contract, and so ask for a motion to allow the chairman to sign the contract with Terracon Consultants.
Move to approve.
We have a motion, do you have a second?
Second.
Any comments, questions? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Vania?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Wallaker? Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobelik?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This next is the task order amendments with Houston Moore Group. This first page that you see up on the screen are all the period of performance extensions. So these primarily are the ones that are going to expire at the end of September, and we have various extensions of those periods of performance. On the next is the task orders, in addition to periods of performance, also need budget increases, and so I'll go through those one at a time and give you highlights of what we're asking for underneath each of those, and then if it's appropriate to get a motion to approve all the HMGs as one, we can do that.
Yeah, go through all of them, and we can either entertain a motion for all of them, or if someone wants to single out one, we can do that.
Okay. So the first task order one is the project management task order for Houston Moore Group. It really allows them to do the oversight and management of their entire suite of other task orders, and we're and this is at pretty much the same rate that they've been in fee schedule that they've been managing these under for the past 2 years. Task order number 7 is the Recreation Master Plan and Design. That's just got a slight increase in budget of $16,000 and extends the period of performance. A lot of the effort that is in that Recreation Master Plan and Design is to do the undulating surface on the eastern excavated material berms, both for the work that's being done by Houston Moore Group as well as the breaches that are designed by the Corps. We do the undulating berm design for that. Task order 9 is the hydrology and hydraulic modeling, and that's the one we tend to come to you with a lot of amendments and 30 work directives on over time, because that is a ongoing process as we're moving through and updating the modeling. There's just it just needs to move stepwise through the process. So we're looking at doing some diversion channel optimization. We looked at that upstream of the Maple, now downstream of the Maple, from the Maple to the outlet. Now we're looking at upstream of the Maple from the Maple to the inlet, looking at ways to reduce the cost of the project and optimize the channel design. The Authority Work Directive 36, the technical services to help with the Maple River Aqueduct modeling has been approved. Now we're rolling it into the task order. Also doing some additional modeling on that aqueduct. Also, there was a fairly large effort to do QA/QC on the overall hydraulic model for the project. That review has been completed. We're also doing, as part of the 7.1 review, the Phase 8 is going to take those results of that QA/QC as well as other additions to the model and further develop the model. And then, as usual, there's additional assistance to the Corps for other requests, and in this case, particularly the Hickson hydrology update. Task Order 13 is the levee design that includes both the Oxbow-Hickson-Bocce levee and the in-town levee. It's got a budget increase of $549,000. A lot of that was due to some changes in scope with the in-town levees primarily on both of the pump stations. On the 2nd Street, there was a lot of coordination with the City Hall project. And on the 4th Street pump station, changed the generator design a little bit to also provide capacity for a wastewater lift station. On the Oxbow-Hickson-Bocce levee, we've just added to the scope of work, putting out this pre-consolidation construction package that I talked about, which will facilitate construction next year. Also added a building to the pump station. That was going to be a pump station that did not have a building, and based on the Corps' review, we added a building to that, so that's an additional scope of work. And we also added some surveying for land acquisition on both the in-town levees and Oxbow-Hickson-Bocce levee. So the total of all those is a budget increase of $1,858,000, as well as the period of performance. So with that,
Any questions on any of those task orders? Mark?
Bruce, on the recreation plan, the work that you're doing just includes the undulations?
that was the increase. There is still existing budget in there and still some existing scope of work to do on the recreation plan itself, but there's no active recreation planning going on at this time, but that is still under that task order, but it's just not a current activity that we're doing. Current activities, as Terry mentioned, that they're working on doing more of their reach design, so we're going to be doing some undulation designs to coincide with Corps' reach design. So in the future, there will be some actual, what would be maybe considered more recreation planning going on, but right now that's not a current activity.
Well, I think that's something we should be looking at, whether we plan for the future or install right now. I think
Okay.
we need to make some recommendations to this board here.
Okay. We'll look at the schedule on that and when we'll start that process back up.
Other questions? Not, want to handle it in one motion? That'd be fine.
Move to approve task orders 1 through 16.
Second.
Motion and second. Comments? Not, take the roll.
Mr. Vania?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Wallaker?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobelik? Yes. Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next is the Corps requested that the local sponsor enter into an agreement with USGS to collect some water surface profile and discharge measurement while the rivers are in low flow. So we're looking at doing elevations for 6 to 8 different flow conditions for model calibration and eventual that will be fed into the design, primarily on the Maple, Wild Rice, Cheyenne, and Red rivers. The estimated cost from USGS based on the scope of work that the Corps and USGS developed is $105,000. So just requesting the ability to enter into that agreement with USGS. So make a motion on that. This is something that Corps would typically do, but sometimes their contracting procedures are take a little longer than ours, and due to schedule, they've asked us to take that on as a local sponsor activity.
Okay. Comments or questions from the board? If you're so inclined, need a motion to authorize the board to go into that contract. We have a motion from the mayor. Second?
Second.
Ken? Any questions or comments? Take the roll, please.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Wallaker?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobolik?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
And then the last agreement I'd like to bring before you is an interim agreement with the Oxbow Country Club. Oxbow Country Club is currently under negotiation with Cass County Joint Water Resource District for the acquisition and relocation of their country club and golf course business. We expect that to take some period of time to negotiate that settlement. In the meantime, since the Oxbow Country Club is going to advertise for their construction bids starting this Monday, they request an interim agreement such that, for lack of a better word, Diversion Authority would backstop until that negotiated settlement is in there. They don't want to enter into what might be a multi-million-dollar contract with a golf course contractor without knowing that the funds would be covered by the Diversion Authority or someone until that agreement is, the ultimate settlement agreement is put in place. So in order to keep the schedule moving this fall, we wanted to enter into this, what would be an interim agreement. So Eric Johnson and the Oxbow Country Club attorney worked together on this agreement and have reached language that is acceptable to both, and so bring it before the board today for your consideration. Eric, I don't know if you'd need to give any more than that.
Well, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want me to review it. It's fairly straightforward. It just allows them to enter into these contracts and move forward without recognizing that we have some work to do to negotiate a comprehensive agreement.
So the interim agreement has been prepared?
Yes, it's been prepared, and yes, we're kind of in agreement on the terms. It's just a matter of getting approval to authorize chairman to execute it. Oxbow Country Club will have to do the same thing.
Not that we would have any problems with it, but that's the reason why we didn't get it as a handout.
Just was kind of approved yesterday afternoon, and I don't know if you distributed.
No, we have not distributed. I didn't know if that was the final. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Eric, I just want to make clear there's no conflict between the relationship with the Fargo Country Club and the Oxbow?
No, I
There's
don't.
some negotiations, they're discussing issues between the
No,
two
I
parties?
don't think so at all, no.
Thank you.
Ken?
Well, I really don't have a problem with the agreement, but I mean, if I'm being asked today to approve an agreement that I've never seen and just hearing about for the first time, it's difficult for me to give the go-ahead on that basis. So I don't stand opposed to it at all, but I don't have anything other than you two telling us that you had an agreement yesterday. And if that was the case, there's really no reason why we couldn't have that information today. So we may not be able to act on that today.
Yeah, I apologize for that. A little miscommunication perhaps between Bruce and me in terms of
What,
that.
either one of you, what problems are created if we don't approve it today? What's the urgency?
Well, next slide is going to be a request for a special board meeting on the 28th to award the in-town levies contract.
We could do that.
If we could do it then, we can add it to the list of that. If they advertise on Monday, they're going to have a 3-week advertisement. They would just want this signed prior to them awarding the contract, not advertising the contract. So there would be no harm in tabling it for today. We'll get that distributed out, and we'll add it to what would be on the special agenda for the 28th.
Yeah, let's go that route.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
And again, apologies for not getting that distributed. So, as you can see here, this is just a request for a special board meeting, the 28th. We're going to open bids on work package 42A1, A3 on the 26th, and would like to bring a recommendation to the board on the 28th for award of that contract. Second item on there is in discussions with.
Just to finish, what time of day is that special meeting asked for?
We can decide that.
Yeah, we could decide.
Thank you.
3:30 work. I would suggest that, but any time would work.
Yeah, you see it on the, as item number 11 down there, so I'd open it up to what time is most convenient.
I would move special meeting at 3:30 on the 28th.
You don't want to meet at 6 in the morning, or?
No. I'm busy.
Okay,
Second.
that's a consensus, we'll go with that.
Okay, and we'll have those
3:30, and then we'll
those-
handle
those 3 items.
3 items.
We'll add the other to that. Okay,
Roger would have been up.
that was the last of my requests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you. Okay, public outreach, Roger.
Public Outreach Committee continues to work with the Corps, or continued to coordinate with the Corps on getting Diversion Authority representatives down to their open house in Rosemount. I was not able to attend that day. So there was some others also, and there might be an opportunity to put a small group together that wasn't able to go at another time. So I guess we're working on that.
On the 26th,
On the 26th? Okay.
we're working on that.
Okay. All right, so the 26th is a possibility, or that's what we're working on.
Oh, my car is almost full, so we're
Okay,
Might have to bring your pickup.
all right.
we're working on that.
Okay. Cemetery mitigation. Outreach team has been working with the Corps as part of a task force to address the need to mitigate the impacts from the diversion operations on the cemeteries and to ensure that proper mitigation is developed with input from the local cemetery officials. North Dakota Legislative Coordination. The Diversion Authority continues to report to the North Dakota State Water Commission on a regular basis at its regular meetings. Several meetings have been held with local legislators to keep them abreast of the latest project updates in preparation for continued funding requests as the legislative session starts in early 2015. Business leaders flood task force. The outreach team continues to work closely with the business leaders flood task force and has been assisting them in providing their memberships in Minnesota and North Dakota with information about the project. The OHB ring levy. There continues to be a lot of questions about aspects of the ring levy. One in particular appears to be a suggestion that there is flood impact on the state of Minnesota from the ring levy itself. An FAQ has been developed and has been shared that shows the issue has been studied and there is no appreciable impact on the river level as a result of the project. And now I'll call on Darren to give us some.
Before we do that, can I ask a question in regards to this last, and maybe I can go to Terry or somebody from the Corps. Do you agree with that statement that if the Oxbow-Hickson-Boxley levy was a standalone feature right now, and we had a significant flood, that there would be a no appreciable impact to the Minnesota side? Is that true?
Yes, that's the information we've seen.
So if that's the case, if there was no impact to the Minnesota side, would there be any environmental concerns on the Minnesota side as a result of that?
I would say no. I mean, the project's been permitted by, it's got a 404 permit from the Corps of Engineers, and it's got the appropriate permits from the state of North Dakota.
I understand the position about the EIS for the full project, but there seems to be this bog down that's been going on over the Oxbow-Hickson-Bocke project and the environmental impacts associated to that. And it would appear to me that if there are no impacts that go to the Minnesota side on just that project as a standalone project, that there wouldn't be any environmental impacts to the Minnesota side. Am I correct in that? I got some head nods, but I'd like some yeses or something.
Yes.
And the impacts of the Oxbow-Hickson-Bocke ring levy were studied in the EA that the Corps, the Corps developed and went through public input and signed off on.
Okay.
So it's been studied through the EA, and it's also was, analyzed through the permitting process too.
Now, and I don't want this to be mistaken as to there's a difference between this internal project, which we were told it had independent utility and was independent of, or could be done independent of the diversion itself. Certainly if the full diversion, the Minnesota EIS is extremely important from that standpoint, and we'd be foolish to say there aren't going to be any impacts on the main project. It's just how can they be mitigated, and what environmental ones are there that need to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a fair statement?
Fair statement.
Thank you.
Terry, I was going to say, Terry, one point, you did mention the 404 permit. The 404 permit that was issued was just for the standalone Oxbow-Hickson-Bocke project. So that 404 permit looked at that project as a standalone entity outside of the overall project, and the environmental impacts on wetlands and waters of the U.S. are being mitigated within that project. So there was a, what I would call standalone permit issued for that project from both State Water Commission and the 404 outside the EIS, which looked at the entire project.
Thank you.
Ken?
Independent of that discussion and of those answers, which is perfectly logical to me, the Minnesota DNR has had this project for almost a year now. Is that correct? Is my timing right? Almost a year?
When did that scoping start? And scoping started over a year ago, isn't it?
Okay. And, and they've received over $1 million from the Diversion Authority to study this project. If they have concerns about the one portion of the project, the Oxbow-Hickson-Bocke levy, how come they don't have an answer to that by now anyway? They've had this for a long time, and this it all shows up, and they have the money to do the research. How come they aren't done with their research on that portion of it? And instead they're filing they're filing, suggesting that because of that, they need to get involved in the lawsuit.
I don't
It doesn't compute.
I don't know that any.
The good news is that we're going to be able to meet with them and talk to them a little bit. Ken had asked that question and also asked for timely finishing up of the project. So I think that we'll answer that question.
Right, and obviously the 28th meeting, have an opportunity, I guess, to
Ask those
exchange
questions.
information. So, I mean, it's a good question. I just, there's no one here that's going to answer that.
Yeah, that's right.
Mr. Chairman, that was one other thing that actually Roger and Kevin talked about a little bit. Just on common sense, when you look at the Oxbow levee, from the first plans to the later plans, it did seem to push more towards the east. And I think that's why some common sense people thought there was an effect on the river as how high the river would go. I think some of the public input we've had had been that. However, we don't have that happen. In the flood of 209, there's an area that is now going to be protected that wasn't protected, was full of water. So I think some people, common sense-wise, would say that must affect the river in its height.
Well, the one area where I would say to that is I don't want to trust common sense, and I don't want to trust lawyers. I want to trust engineers when it comes to these things, and that's kind of where, because this gets into the scientific data that we need to do, and we need to be listening to our engineers, and that's why I asked the question: if Oxbow Hickson-Bocce was a standalone, would there be impacts that would spread into Minnesota as a result of that standalone project? And what I'm hearing today is the answer to that is no. That's all I.
And I agree with Kevin. So that's what I'm saying. It's just as some people came and said, you moved the levee, so therefore there must be a cause and effect. You've just answered the question. The engineers say no. So that's.
Go ahead, Roger.
Okay, we'll call on Darren to give us an online update. No.
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you very much. The e-newsletter will be going out mid to late next week, and among the topics we'll be discussing and outlining for our readers is just what you were talking about just now. The OHB levee project, how there is no, what was the word, appreciable impact in Minnesota. Also, we're going to talk about why the work is happening now, and why it was important to begin that work now on that OHB levee. Also, we'll be talking about the RFQ, the submittals requested for the agricultural risk study. Those are the topics in the e-newsletter. We'll also have those online on the website as well.
Go ahead, Ken.
Just a comment, as I was looking on the website last night, I found the tab that allows a person to look at, any person to look at all of the technical documents and all of the submissions and everything that we have here. When will that be on the website?
Your packets are going to be on the website. Well, they're actually on there now.
Okay.
They're in the meetings section where there are meeting documents.
Okay. And so I would just like to call attention to the public so that they recognize that all of this information that we see is out there right now. So everything is public.
And that tab is the library tab, and under that is meeting documents.
Yep.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Tom, you were gone at last meeting.
I was, but I understand you reported for us.
Well,
So,
I'll let
thank you for doing that.
expound on that if you'd like, or anything else that's coming up.
Right, so our last meeting was about a week before this last meeting, and I think was reported on at that last meeting. In the last couple of weeks, we did, last week I met with a small group of community representatives from the rural community who reached out to us. So there were two of them, and I asked Eric Dodds from AE2S to join me. So we had a group of about 5 people who met, just trying to better understand each other's positions. And we're going to continue to reach out and make sure people know that we're willing and able to meet with anybody at any time and try to share opinions.
Good. That's good to hear. So it was just kind of a Q&A?
It was a Q&A, and I think we each brought up some good points that, can't say that we made any great headway either way, but it was beneficial, and we told them that we would continue to stay in touch, and again, suggested to them that if there was anybody else who wanted to meet with us, we'd certainly be welcome to it.
Any plan down the road for legislative meetings on North Dakota side, or is that after election, or?
We're planning to have at least one more meeting before the session begins after the first of the year to touch base with our legislators and make sure they understand what needs to be done, and we'll stay in close touch with them.
Any questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom. Land Management Committee, report on that. We had an update on property and farmland management from Piper. There was simply a document that the land that is owned by the Diversion Authority, rentals, and the dollars that came with that. So there was just a report, no motions or action. We addressed the RFQ, and I'll address that right now. It was alluded to earlier from the Outreach Committee. You have a copy of this in front of you. Should have, I believe, called the draft for RFQ. This, a month ago, was before the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee was in favor of moving ahead. A couple nights ago, the Ag Policy Committee met. Maybe, Roger, I'll turn over to you. I know there wasn't a forum there, kind of express what their discussion was.
Tuesday evening, we had an Ag Committee meeting, and we did not receive a quorum of our members. And there was good reasons why most of those members were not there. But we continued with the meeting anyway, and we looked at the RFQ, and that's what's before you. And the RFQ, if we just take a couple steps back, and we asked the Corps, is there an impact to the flowage easement if we provide crop insurance? And we've talked about this probably at several meetings. But we asked the Corps probably almost 2 months ago, at least, and they looked at it and said, you know what, we really need a little more information from you to help us come to a determination. So they really wanted us to do an appraisal and of actual farmland, a before and after look with the flowage easement only, and then a flowage easement with crop insurance, and see if there is a differential. So that's where this RFQ is going to lead us. We will advertise for RFQs from companies that can provide us with the information that we need. And at the end of that, we would expect to have an answer to help us down the road to protecting the farmers that we will impact, the ones that operate the land, that don't necessarily own the land, but rent it and operate it. And as I've said before, these farmers are concerned that if we operate the project, their federal crop insurance, which they and their banker rely on heavily, if we flood their land, we cause damage, we prevent them from planting, and we do that, their federal crop insurance will not cover them. So that's really why we're here. That's why we're looking at different ways to provide that coverage. And this RFQ will help us kick the can down the road a little further and help to make some decisions.
the Land Management Committee did make a motion and approve recommendation to this group to move ahead. If you look on page 5, you'll see a timeline. And even though we didn't have a quorum or vote from the Ag Committee, the people that were there were in favor of moving ahead. We've had approval from the Finance Committee, we've had approval from the Land Management Committee, and I think to stick with the timeline here, that I would ask that we have an approval from this group. Ken?
Am I to understand that you are actually evaluating every piece of land in the, that's impacted in this study in order to come up with the baseline answers that you're looking for?
No, Ken, what we're going to look at is most likely 3 to 5 properties
Okay, good.
within the staging area, anywhere from the deepest, closest to the embankment, to the shallowest, and then something in between. And then also on the Minnesota side, possibly including some land there.
Sure.
And keep in mind, this is an RFQ, so we're evaluating qualifications of a firm. Once that's selected, we'll set the scope, or they'll certainly understand that, so we would have a pricing. We would have an opportunity to address that as well.
Move to approve.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Further comments or questions?
Who's going to, I'm assuming there's going to be a selection committee, is that going to be the land management group?
Oh, in evaluating,
Yeah, evaluating all of these potential ones that,
well, that's a good question, Kevin.
I come up with them once in a while.
Yeah, right. Well, it will, as I explained the other night, that through the whole process, this is after we've selected the firm, I think the Land Management Committee is an appropriate one. Keith, do you have comments on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend that we have a smaller staff committee that could bring a recommendation to the Land Management Committee.
I guess I raised that question because I think if we're going to do this, we should know the process.
Yeah, yep. Well, since we're going to be moving forward on this, we better give some thought to who that's going to be, so that you're knowing when you're voting on this. Any suggestions, Keith?
Well, I would, I guess I would.
Well, let me start. I mean, obviously, I think Roger should be on it. I think that Eric, Keith, Pat, I guess from the Minnesota side.
Looks like Kevin has an interest in it.
Would you?
Well, John's been involved with the land stuff. I would like to see John.
I guess I would recommend John.
John?
What did I have? 4 people? So,
1, 2, 3. I have 5.
5.
You said Eric.
Anybody feel someone else is part of that? Ken, would you want to be? Or?
Well, I would be if you wanted me to be. I don't feel that.
Okay.
I mean, I think the Land Management Committee is pretty well versed in coming up with what's needed.
Well, I do think that this group would then, Keith, did I have you on this?
Yes.
They could go the selection process, then it'll come back through the Land Management Committee. Okay, thanks, Kevin, for that question. So, did we have a motion?
We have a motion on the floor.
Okay, roll, please.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Wallaker?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobolik?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
The other items that we had in Land Management Committee, we had an update on right of entry and cultural resources, and then Mark gave an update on land management summary. I don't know if Mark is here. You want to cover just quickly
Direct your attention to the handout entitled Land Management Summary in front of you, same format as you've seen previous meetings. A new feature we added on second and third page, you'll see yellow highlights, and that calls your attention to things that have progressed in the last month. So good news, there is some movement forward. On the front page, the bullets on the bottom of the front page are probably you can get a lot of information from a few words there. First bullet, we received approval from the U.S. Army Corps on 8 residential and 1 ag appraisal, as well as the country club and the 1 Fargo Public Schools property. So we are seeing movement on review appraisals from the Corps, and that seems to be proceeding at a steady pace. So that's good news. This morning we approved task orders for acquiring properties in the channel footprint in the first area from the Rush River to the outlet. That's that second to last bullet. We also approved task order for Elzagle acquisitions. I think there's 10 properties there. So if there's no questions, that's my report.
Any questions for Mark? Okay, thank you. That's the end of land management report. Finance Committee, Mike?
Good afternoon. The Finance Committee met yesterday. We reviewed the financial statements and the bills that were due. And the financial statements are in your packets, and I would say if you have some questions on those, how to read them, that sort of thing, you can contact either Ken Costin or myself, and we can go over that with you. We closed on the U.S. Bank loan. It's basically a loan that the county took out with an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Fargo to pledge their sales tax for payment. So one of the things we needed to approve yesterday was some drawdown of funds. When we closed the loan on July 31st, we did have to draw down some funds, and then again we're looking to draw down some more funds. The original drawdown was for $60,200 and was to cover some of the closing costs. That was part of the process that we had to do as the closing. The drawdown of funds that the Finance Committee approved yesterday, in addition to that $60,200, was $20 million to finance the upcoming expenses. There is a letter to the chairman of your diversion authority in there and some suggested motions at item 9B.
Okay, you have that. The two motions, right, Mike?
Correct. The first motion is a retroactive one.
Right.
The intergovernmental agreement calls for the Finance Committee to approve any drawdowns, and then we just forward it on to this board.
Yeah. And a suggested motion there is to approve a draw request for loan funds from the U.S. Bank, the amount of $60,200 to cover the expected legal and closing costs of getting the loan.
Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Mr. Chairman, I did have a question in terms of just, because this is basically an agreement between the North Dakota entities, I question about a Minnesota vote on this. My Minnesota vote as a diversion authority member when it doesn't apply to anything for us. Is this something that needs to be approved by the diversion authority itself too?
Yeah, it's money for the diversion authority. I mean, it's basically money that's going to be spent by the authority board.
But it's all based on a.
I guess I understand your question, but I don't see it any different than sales tax monies that we collect and spend on projects.
I just wanted to ask a question.
Yeah. Eric, do you have any thoughts on that? John?
John's the drafter.
Okay, okay.
The
intergovernmental agreement between CAS and Fargo requires approval by the Diversion Authority, recommendation upon the Finance Committee of the Diversion Authority, and approval by the Diversion Authority. The reason that is because funds are being used for the diversion project itself, and that was a government oversight requirement of the agreement that this board would have final approval over expenses. The intent being that someday when we determine what the final financing model will be, is that we would be refunding the funds being expended today by this loan. So it requires, the short answer is yes, it requires your approval.
And I guess my sole purpose behind it, I didn't know that if I should be voting on something that did not matter in terms of the loan agreement. But we're good.
Okay.
Well, it matters because the ability for us to do everything cash-only basis we don't have. So it's knowing that we're going to get the money, but at a good rate.
Okay, we did have a motion and a second. Any other questions? If not, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Wallaker?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobolik?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mike, did you
And
already talk about the draw that we wanted? Or?
Yeah, the second motion is for a draw of $20 million that, once this board agrees to it, I'll send that in tomorrow to U.S. Bank. They'll in turn send the money to the county next week, and then until that money is exhausted, we'll be using that money to pay the diversion bills.
Move to approve.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Comments or questions? Not take the roll.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Wallaker? Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobolik?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Just for your information, the way the flow of funds is going to be the same way that it is going now. The only difference is when Fargo sends us a billing at the end of the month, instead of us paying half of that billing, we'll pay the entire amount of that billing out of these loan proceeds until those are gone. So the accounting's all going to remain the same. Fargo's doing a great job on that. They're getting all the reports we need, and we didn't want to disrupt that process. Some of the other committee action, Bruce Spiller reviewed the task orders with us that you just approved. And one of the things about that is it's kind of nice to know what kind of things are coming up in the future. And part of the financial reports, you'll see that Kent keeps track of all of the task orders issued and how much has been expended on those. We always know what that balance is. The Finance Committee went into a executive session for a period of time yesterday to kind of discuss strategy on negotiating a contract extension with CH2M Hill. And back in open session, we authorized Keith Burnt and Pat Zavarol to negotiate with CH2M Hill a contract extension. And Keith, did you have anything to report on that?
Yes, thank you, Mike. We did, following that's authorization from the Finance Committee, we met with CH2M Hill, and you have, was passed out in front of you a proposed task order number 5, which extends the contract of CH2M Hill for the next 6 months. If you recall, about a year ago, when we'd gotten to a point on the project where we hadn't received authorization yet, and in being frugal, I guess, and not going any farther ahead than we needed to, we did cut CH2M back quite a bit from where they were prior to a year ago in terms of, so they downsized their Fargo staff by a significant amount, and we've been operating at that lower level for the past year. Now with authorization and with additional activities such as the Oxbow work, the in-town levy work, and design work going up on the north side and elsewhere, we feel like it's imperative that we start ramping CH2M Hill back up again. So this proposed, but yet because of the uncertainties about the project and about appropriations, we've kind of went 6 months at a time. Once we really start construction and have an appropriation, I think it would be helpful if we would give CH2M Hill a little more certainty that they're going to be around for longer than 6 months. But at this point in time, we feel like 6 months is the appropriate time frame to be negotiating our contract extension. So we're proposing a contract extension of 6 months, and the tasks are listed on the handout. I won't go through all of those, in an amount of $1,860,000. So with that, I guess we would ask for your support in the form of a motion for the chairman to be authorized to sign.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion authorizing the extension.
Motion and second. Questions or comments? Not, we'll take the roll.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Wallaker? Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobolik?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Continue. Mike?
Okay, the last item is item 9C, and it's a voucher approval. And these vouchers were approved yesterday also by the Finance Committee.
Move to approve.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Front page is the total there. You see the itemization. We will take the roll.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Mr. Wallaker?
Yes.
Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Ms. Sobolik?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Anything else to come before us?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.